Hello everybody, so today I really need to make y'all aware of something incredibly alarming that we've just recently learned about in the last couple of days. From this article from the Texas Tribune, Texas Attorney General's office sought state data on transgender Texans. So let's see what exactly was going on here. Employees at the Texas Department of Public Safety, the Texas DPS, in June received a sweeping request from Republican Attorney General Ken Paxton's office to compile a list of individuals who had changed their gender on their Texas driver's licenses and other department records during the past 2 years. Need total number of changes from male to female and female to male for the last 24 months, broken down by month. The chief of the DPS driver's license division emailed colleagues in the department on June 30th, according to a copy of a message obtained by the Washington Post through a public records request. We won't need driver's license/ID numbers at first, but may need to have them later if we are required to manually look up documents. You know, something notable in this sentence here. Need total number of changes from male to female and female to male for the last 24 months. It's like, you know, trans men are so often forgotten about, except when it comes to persecuting trans people. You know, they can make an effort to remember that we exist if they're doing bad things to us. That's cool. After more than 16,000 such instances were identified, DPS officials determined that a manual search would be needed to determine the reason for the changes. DPS spokesperson Travis Considine told the Post in response to questions. So here, what they're saying is that sex marker changes on a driver's license or other documents can happen because of an error or because you are fixing an error. And really funny thing about this is that there was actually an episode of King of the Hill where Hank Hill would be on this list of trans people in Texas. I mean, he lived in Texas. There's an episode, season 9, episode 5. Hank got his driver's license renewed, and then it said female. Actually, I'll show you guys because it's real silly and relatable as a trans person.
Hank R. Hill, eyes brown, yes sir, weight 220, and dang proud of it. Sex F? That's female. Look at that, Peggy, right over the Texas state seal. But what if I died in some car accident and because of my license they put me in the ladies' morgue? You can bet that'd wind up on the news.
Hank Hill would have been on this list of scary trans people. Isn't it interesting, right? Like cis people talking about their fears and concerns about having their gender being invalidated legally or socially, and yet whenever it happens to trans people, it's just like not a big deal. It's just that's the way it should be. It's especially interesting that in this episode of King of the Hill, like one of the first things that Hank gets upset about is the potential of being misidentified after his death, which is absolutely an anxiety of a lot of trans people. A lot of trans people have dead names on their tombstones, which infuriates me. Cis people become a little bit distressed, actually, if something like this happens to them, if there's some kind of a mistake and their gender is misidentified, and yet if it happens to trans people, no big deal, I guess. But mistakes like that is the reason why this information did not get actually passed down to the Attorney General's office in Texas, because there would have been a whole lot of cis people that would have been lumped into that list just from mistakes being made. The data was going to be inaccurate because they did not have the resources to go in and individually check the reason for the change in every single one of these cases, and that is why ultimately they decided this is not accurate, and we're not collecting and giving up this information, which is a relief. But honestly, this should definitely not have been happening in the first place. The section of this article that was particularly scary for me was this right here. Paxton's office bypassed the normal channels, DPS's government relations and general counsel's offices, and went straight to the driver's license division staff in making the request, according to a state employee familiar with it, who said that the staff was told that Paxton's office wanted numbers and later would want a list of names as well as the number of people who had had a legal sex change. A list of names. I want you to think about that for a second. A list of names. A list of names of people who had their sex marker changed on their ID. Why do they want that? Why would they ask for this information? Why are they collecting this data? What could this be used for? Aside from it being a violation of privacy, something that y'all have probably been made aware of in the last few months is warning signs leading up to genocide. And this is why this is really goddamn scary. You can browse this a little bit if you'd like to, but the one that I really specifically want to point out is Stage 2, Symbolization. A lot of these warning signs intersect a little bit. You might notice they're not like totally distinct from each other, and I think that this would be an example of both classification and symbolization in this case. And what's really important, I think, information about symbolization here is a preventative measure for this stage is to make sure ethnic, religious, racial, and national identities do not appear on ID cards and passports. Work to make sure negative or racist words for groups become culturally unacceptable. First of all, in this last sentence here, the right wing has been working very hard to make the word pedophile basically a synonym for LGBT people, especially trans people. It's gotten to the point where saying the words inappropriate for children is indistinguishable from saying LGBT. In my state, in Missouri right now, there's actually a possibility that our public libraries may be defunded soon because there is a new rule that has been proposed that would remove funding from libraries if minors accessed age-inappropriate material, which they do not actually define as something that is related to LGBT people or trans people. But we know what it means, and it's intentionally vague to create a chilling effect. You know, anybody who's paying attention, we see those words, age inappropriate, and we know who they're talking about. The reason why this data was collected on Texans who had changed their sex marker was to create a list to identify trans people. A funny thing I've noticed among a lot of progressives is this push for having an X on your driver's license instead of an M or an F. And, people who are just a little bit liberal and maybe a little bit unaware might think like, oh, that's really great because then non-binary people can have their not male, not female marker on their ID. That's wonderful. But no, that's literally just this symbolization here. You are putting a marker on your ID that says that you are trans. If a cop pulls you over, they'll know that you're trans. If you apply for a job and they need an ID, they will know that you're trans. We already have data demonstrating that trans people are discriminated against in the workplace a whole lot. I mean, it's technically illegal, but that doesn't stop it from happening. There was somebody in this article, a trans woman that they interviewed, and she said, I don't want a cop pulling me over and knowing I'm trans. That's why I changed my gender marker extremely quickly after transitioning, she said. The trans woman that they interviewed also said she was worried that state officials might try to switch the gender listed on her driver's license back to male. Would it be dangerous? Yeah, it'd be dangerous. That's the other thing. If your gender marker is not accurate to how you present and what the gender that people read you as, that also serves to out you as trans to other people, which again, symbolization, that's even if it's not an X, if it's a gender marker on your ID that does not accurately reflect who you are, this effectively serves as symbolization. Like, they may as well be putting a goddamn pink triangle on on everyone's license if this is what they're trying to do. Also, something else I wanted to point out is this compiled list had more than 16,000 gender changes shown between June 1st, 2020 and June 30th, 2022. And I want y'all to think about what a room of 16,000 people would look like. That's a whole lot of goddamn people, right? Like, sure, some of these people are cis people who had, like, an error and had to get something changed or whatever. But assuming a great number of these people are trans, a lot of people have this tendency to think like, oh, trans people, that's like 1 or 2% of the population. That's not very many people. Motherfucker, that's a whole lot of goddamn people. And the reason why I want you to think about that is because a lot of people like to imagine that there are not very many trans people. Trans people make up approximately 1 to 2% of the population. And a lot of people just kind of think like, 1 or 2%, that's not very many, but motherfucker, there are a lot of us. There are a lot of trans people, and I think a lot of people have a tendency of wanting to sweep all of these problems under the rug and just kind of ignore them because, like, that's not enough people to have to be concerned or worried about. They use this 1 or 2% or this rarity to sort of excuse responsibility or excuse a need to pay attention and like do political advocacy or vote in a way that would prevent harm. Like, our existence is downplayed. The harm that is being done to us is downplayed based on like how many people are trans. And motherfucker, a lot of people are trans. You know, there are 330 million people in America. If 1% of them are trans, that's still more than 3 million trans people. If 2% of them are trans, that's almost 7 million people who are trans. 7 million trans Americans. And it is so goddamn goofy for y'all to think there aren't enough trans people out there to give a shit. As far as I have read in the articles that are available right now, they have reached out asking for the AG's office for comment to explain what was going on. In one of these articles, it looked like one of the staff members was just lying about it and just denying it, if I'm understanding this correctly. Last month, the Post made a request to Paxton's office for all records the Attorney General's office had directed other state offices to compile related to driver's licenses in which the sex of the driver was changed, as well as related emails between Paxton's office and other state agencies. Officials indicated that no such records existed. Why would the Office of the Attorney General have gathered this information? Assistant Attorney General June Hardin wrote in an email to the Post, later adding, "Why do you believe this is the case?" You know, something that's really hard, I think, as a trans person, is that our community is so disempowered. We're discriminated against in the workplace terribly, and a lot of us are very broke. We've had to spend a lot of money, sometimes on medical transition. In the United States, healthcare is very often for rich people. Medical transition is for rich people. And, you know, my top surgery was $10,000, and I've had to replace my wardrobe, which cis people don't tend to have to do. I mean, it's something they have to do over the course of their lifetime as they get older, but they don't have to get rid of everything and replace everything in a handful of months. That shit is expensive. I've had to pay my court. It was more than $300, and my girlfriend is also trans. We both had to go to court to get our legal name changes. So that was several $100s for each of us, and you know that's an expense that cis people don't have. Another one is I'm gonna have to update my passport. My passport is not expired. It's not time to replace my passport, but my passport has some lady's name on it, and it says female. It does not look like me in that picture. It's not a valid ID. A passport's like $150 minimum, by the way. And as a trans person right now, paying attention to the news and seeing how dangerous things are getting for us lately, a lot of trans people need to get their passports renewed. I'd really like to get my passport renewed, but I don't have, $150 laying around, to be honest. A lot of us are just trying to scrape by and working very hard just to survive. And so we aren't in positions of power where we can see something like this happening to us and make it stop. Or even those of us who may have found ourselves in positions of power. A great number of those people are stealth. The only reason why they were able to get into the position that they're in is because they have convinced the people around them that they are not trans. And so even if they are in a position where they can do something, there's a safety interest for them not to. So anyway, this is really goddamn scary. I'd really like it if y'all could pay a bit of attention. Even if you're not very well versed in history, I'd like you to take a minute to just think about who gets put on lists. What do they make lists of individuals for with their names on these lists? What is that for? Why would a state want to identify a group of people and the individuals who are a part of a group? Because it doesn't mean good things for those people. Like I said, most trans people are poor as fuck, and I know it's not really realistic for a whole lot of people, even cis people. Cis working class people having to get up and move to a different state, becoming a political refugee. Suddenly, it's so unrealistic for a whole lot of people to make a change like that. Financially, it's just not realistic. And, if you live in Texas, if you live in one of these red states that have been relentlessly persecuting trans people, if you can, please, for the love of God, get the hell out of there. And, the question is, where are you supposed to go? There are a few states that have specific protections for trans people, and I can leave a link in the comments to a map, a website that has a map that helps you determine what is going to be a safer state. Even if I had $100,000 in my bank account right now, I don't know where I would go. I don't know what state, what location, what country is going to be reliably safe in the future. Things are precarious to a point that things are a little bit precarious and unpredictable right now. And besides having a go plan and a little bit of money saved up, a lot of money saved up to move out of your state, community is really important right now. If you can reach out to other people in your life, if you can form a robust support network right now, that is one of the most important things you can do for your own safety and well-being. I don't want to be thinking about this all day. I really still want to have a good day despite this, so good luck, everybody. Stay safe to the best of your ability. Reach out if you aren't feeling well. Distract yourself, do some nice things for yourself, and keep going. And I will see you next time.